Okay. Hi everyone. Okay. This week's vlog is going to be a little different from what I have been doing. Last week I finished by kind of telling you how I got really sick with my first semaglutide injection. So I wanted to do kind of a story time with that and discuss a little bit more about everything that happened. And as you can tell by the title of this video, why I quit after just 1 week and 1 injection. So let's go ahead and sit down, relax, and let's have a little conversation. Let's start off by talking about, first of all, why I went on a semaglutide. Over a decade ago, I want to say it's close to 12 years at this point, I was diagnosed with PCOS. I had put on a substantial amount of weight within a year. My periods were irregular, and I finally went into the doctor because I wasn't sure what was going on. And lo and behold, they did an ultrasound and they diagnosed me with PCOS. So I have been struggling with that for over a decade. Of course, they put me on birth control just to kind of regulate things. I think that's like the number one thing they do. And then I just kind of lived with it. When we wanted to start having kids, we were uncertain if we were going to be able to have kids. We were not successful in the very beginning. We tried like kind of close to that time of being diagnosed with PCOS and nothing was happening. And after about a year, we just decided maybe now's not the right time. I was in my late 20s, my mid-late 20s. So I wasn't in a huge rush. I knew I had time and I didn't want to jump into like hormone treatments or anything like that. I just wanted to kind of let life go and see what happened. Fast forward about, gosh, it was in 2019 when I found out I was unexpectedly pregnant with my daughter, which was such a shock and also so exciting. I hadn't been on birth control for about a year and we just were kind of like seeing what would happen. And thankfully we had, that wonderful surprise. I also was able to get pregnant with my son soon after. I was about not full 2 years postpartum yet when I got pregnant with him. And I'm so thankful every single day that I didn't have issues with that. My hormones, my doctor thinks my hormones just kind of regulated a little bit on their own as I got into my mid-30s. And it just happened. So I'm so thankful for that part of things. But my weight has been pretty much at a standstill for this entire time I've been been diagnosed with PCOS. And losing weight is very difficult. Anybody who has PCOS knows it is not an easy task to lose weight with it. Your body just holds on to that weight. So I was hoping semaglutide would work out great for me because I thought maybe it would give me kind of a jump start into getting myself back to that healthy weight that I have not been in over a decade. And I was very hopeful because all I saw was these amazing experiences from people online about just how much it changed their lives. So I was very excited to try it. I, again, was hopeful that I know that there was side effects. I was hopeful that I wouldn't have any major ones. I would have, mild ones that I could just kind of power through and work through and be done within the first couple of weeks. I was not, however, expecting the intense side effects that I did have. So I don't know if it was just because my algorithm on social media was all the positive stories. I hardly saw anything negative. So I was like going into this kind of blind as far as what the negative side effects could be. Now let's jump back to my first shot. So I was told to do it in the evening because if I got nausea with that first one, I'd kind of sleep through it and I'd feel better by the next morning. I was expecting nothing more than that. So I did my first shot on Thursday evening at like 7:30. I read in bed for a while and I kind of started getting a little like kind of tummy grumbles, but I wasn't thinking much of it. It kind of felt a little bit more like indigestion when I finally fell asleep. So 2 hours later, I woke up like sweaty feeling, clammy, so nauseous. I just knew that I was going to start throwing up. So I moved to the guest room and I spent the rest of the night sick and throwing up, and it was miserable. That entire next day, so for like a 24-hour period, I could not keep anything down. Not even like water. I was trying to drink water and electrolytes, and I would just throw it up like within an hour of getting it in my system. I felt like death. I was hopeful that maybe, the first 24 or 40 hours would be really bad and then it would taper off. That did not happen for me, unfortunately. I spent that entire weekend. So Friday was the worst. Saturday I wasn't throwing up anymore, but I could not stomach anything. I could barely sip water. I did my best to stay hydrated because I was very concerned about getting dehydrated and ending up in the ER and having to get like an IV or something like that. So I did my very best to drink like liquid IV. I had a little bit of like protein shakes here and there just to like get something in my system, but I felt absolutely horrible. Another thing I was dealing with, not just the nausea, but it was like my skin. I don't know if it was something with my nerves, but my skin hurt so bad. It literally felt like they were being rubbed by sandpaper all day. Like imagine like the worst sunburn you have. You know how your skin is so sensitive. It absolutely hurts just to touch. That's how my skin felt. It still is dealing with that, and it's been like a week and a half almost. So don't love that. Another thing I was dealing with was just temperature control issues. Like I would be freezing, and then sweating and hot, and then mostly freezing cold. My feet literally felt like they were dead. I had like such cold feet. It was ridiculous. But the hardest thing for me was the nausea. I do not do well with that. So that leads me to another thing I want to talk about. This triggered a form of PTSD in me that I have known I've had, but I've kind of just brushed it off, I guess. And I'm realizing more and more it is something that I'm going to have to like work through. And this may sound absolutely ridiculous to some people, but if you have dealt with this in your pregnancy, you will understand. So I was diagnosed with Hyperemesis Gravidarum, I think is what it's called, HG, with my second pregnancy. But I did have it with my first pregnancy. I just kind of like tried to work through it and look past it. And my doctors just, I don't think took me as seriously as they should have. So if you have had that, you know how much that rocks your world. Again, going back to my story, we struggled a little bit with infertility when we got pregnant, kind of like on a whim. It wasn't even like planned. I was so thrilled going into my pregnancy that I was finally going to be able to experience this. And then at 6 weeks, I found out I was pregnant at like 4 weeks. I found out I was pregnant at 6 weeks, and around 8 weeks, the major nausea hit. And of course, I knew that was a side effect of being pregnant. Morning sickness can happen. I also knew it wasn't just the morning that can happen, but you can have, that nausea throughout the day, nights, anytime. The difference with mine was once it hit me, I threw up on average 3 times a day. And that lasted my entire pregnancy. I lost weight in both my pregnancies, in the very beginning, especially because it was so severe. And with my daughter, I didn't know much about HG. So I just kind of thought like I was being a wimp or something was wrong with me, because everyone would tell me like, oh yeah, I remember having morning sickness, eat saltine crackers, have ginger like chews, like all these different things. The doctor prescribed me, is it B6 and Unisom, like you take together, and it's supposed to help with nausea. I literally could not keep anything down. I would get like midday where I could like eat a tiny bit and it would stay in my system, but then evening would hit and I would start puking again. So it was miserable. With her, I got a little bit of a reprieve around like the 7-month mark. The nausea let up a tiny bit, and I'm telling you, it let up just where I wasn't puking multiple times a day. I was in a constant state of nausea when I was pregnant with her, and it was miserable. And I look back on it, and it was mentally the darkest place I think I have ever been in my life. I spent the majority of that pregnancy in bed, barely functioning. It was absolutely horrible. And it was like nothing I've ever experienced. So I felt like no one took me seriously. I felt like no one believed how sick I felt. The only person that understood it was my husband, because he saw my struggle every single day. He saw me like barely being able to get out of bed without puking. It was just miserable. I had people tell me, it gets better, it gets better. Second trimester, it'll wear off. That didn't happen. You know, maybe you need to be eating smaller meals for the day. Maybe eat more protein, this and that. It was like, nothing is helping. Like, I'm trying everything and nothing is helping. And it feels very helpless when you're in that moment, to have like no true support. And you feel like you're kind of like losing your mind. Like, okay, something's wrong with me that I can't get through this. So I feel like from that point, anytime that I then dealt with nausea after that pregnancy, I would like instantly mentally spiral and start feeling like that helpless depression that I felt during that pregnancy. And then I got pregnant the second time and it was even worse. So with him, it kicked in right at 6 weeks. Like 6 weeks on the dot, I woke up, started puking. And with him, I was puking more than 3 times a day. It was literally like 4 to 5 times a day, sometimes more. I was so miserable, and I called my doctor and demanded some form of prescription, because I'm like, I'm not doing, the B6 Unisom did nothing for me with my first pregnancy. It's not going to do anything this time. So they put me on, first they tried me on Phenergan. I don't know what it is. I didn't want to do Zofran because, of course, I've seen like the horror story, like studies that potentially it could be linked to like birth defects. Mind you, I don't think that is common, but I was very nervous about that. The medication that ended up working best for me was Bongesta, which sucked because my insurance didn't want to cover that for me. So I had to pay it out of pocket, and it was like $100 something a month. And I would take that. And then I would also take the Phenergan. I am so bad with medication names. So anyways, it's one of those anti-nausea ones that they will prescribe during pregnancy. But I would take Bongesta in the morning, and then around 2 or 3, I would take the other one to help me just get through the day. I was still nauseous. If I ate certain things, I would still throw up. I was barely functioning, but at least I wasn't throwing up like all day long. Again, that sent me into the spiral mentally, where I was just so sad that my pregnancies could not be enjoyed, for one. And secondly, with the second baby, I was dealing with a 2-year-old and trying to still be the best mom I could be while suffering. And it was horrible mentally. And still talking about it like sends me to that place that was so dark. But I know other women have been through it, and I know other women fully understand how helpless you feel in that moment. And there's nothing you can do but just suffer through until your baby is born. With him, I did end up in the hospital. Hold on. Okay, sorry. Trying to get myself together. Okay. So with my son, I said earlier, I was actually officially diagnosed with HG because I think it was around the beginning of my second trimester. Despite being on medication, I had a 24-hour period where I was throwing up like every hour on the hour. And I ended up in the hospital because of dehydration concerns. And I was in there for about 4 or 5 hours. They were giving me fluids. They gave me Zofran. They did all the things. And that was when they officially diagnosed me with it. And that's when I felt like I started being taken more seriously about the fact that felt like I was dying every single day. Mind you, it didn't change much. I still stayed on the medication I was on. They just gave me Zofran for days that were extra bad. But my pregnancies were just rough. The only thing I'm thankful for is that my babies were healthy, and they were full term, and my labors went pretty smooth. So I can't complain about that by any means. But that just mentally, I feel like has changed me probably forever. Being that sick during pregnancies did something and like rewired my brain in some way that when, to this day, if I have nausea or throwing up, again, like I said, I spiral mentally. I feel like so depressed. I feel helpless again. I feel all those feelings I felt when I was pregnant. and it like spikes my anxiety, and I already deal with anxiety. So it's like, it's not a good combination. So therefore, that is why I quit doing the semaglutide. The way I felt, it was like an entire week. Let's see, it's been a week and Thursday, Friday, like 4 days now. It's like a week and a half since my first semaglutide shot. Obviously, I didn't do the second week because I'm like, I just can't do this. I'm still not 100%. I'm still dealing with random nausea that hits. I'm thankfully able to eat a little bit more than I was for the entire first week. But feeling that helpless, dark mental state like take over me again was enough for me to go, this is not worth it. Again, I know there's tons of people out there who have no issues. They have minimal side effects and it works amazing for them. And I'm so thankful that it works for them. But for me, I just could not mentally power through those symptoms. There was also this part of me that was feeling like that anxiety come back of people telling me during my pregnancy that it'll get better in the second trimester, or like, I know you're nauseous, but just eat this or just do that. Like, it was almost like downplaying the symptoms I was feeling. I was kind of feeling that again with this. Mind you, I know people in the social media world, because I was posting a lot on my TikTok, were just there to support me. And I love that. I love how social media can be that way. But hearing the like, it gets better, just push through, it gets better, just push through, sent me back to that place being pregnant. And I'm like, I just can't do this. My husband noticed my mental state not being what it should be. He was concerned about like how dark of a place I had gone to. It wasn't worth it for me. So my mental state spiraled within just a 7-day period, and that was very scary to see. I have worked very hard on my mental health the last year, and to see it spiral so quickly over something like nausea was kind of scary, honestly. So that is why I quit my semaglutide within the first week. I just couldn't do it. For those that have gone on it and have experienced extreme symptoms, you're not alone. Just because the majority of the stuff you see out there is so positive, don't feel like something is wrong with you. I think just some bodies don't tolerate it. So I'm still dealing with the skin pain and like the nerve pain on like right below the skin. I still can't eat a lot. I'm eating more, but I will like fill up very quickly. And then I have to have Tums because I just feel like I start getting nauseous. So it just wasn't for me. My goal is to just really focus on maybe meeting with a nutritionist this year and coming up with a game plan that's going to help me get myself the healthiest I can be. Not only for myself, but for my children. They are 5 and almost 3. And I just want to be able to have more energy and chase them around. I'm still working on my health this year. I still want to get myself to a healthy weight, whatever that may be. Unfortunately, it's just not going to be through a semaglutide or a trizepatide. I just can't do that. With that all being said, I also wanted to talk about this today because of the fact that this all kind of stems from the HG pregnancies I dealt with. It's such a helpless place to be. So if you are somebody who has dealt with that, like, or you're in the middle of a pregnancy dealing with it, just know you are not alone. I know on some of the darkest days, you feel like you are in a world all by yourself, but you aren't. And it will make you such a strong person going through that. But you aren't alone. Oh, that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this today, because again, it can be very isolating to go through something that has like altered you kind of for the rest of your life. I feel silly saying I have PTSD from my HG pregnancies, but that's the only way I can explain what happens to me when I do experience that amount of sickness again. And I just, again, that is why I could not power through and hope that eventually those symptoms would subside with the semaglutide, because I did that with my pregnancies and it never got better. And I think it just made me more and more depressed and affected my mental state so much. So there's my little story time. Sorry I got so emotional. It still affects me very much, as you can see. I also felt kind of like a failure, as dumb as that sounds, not being able to power through with the semaglutide. But at the same time, I was telling myself, you know, if this is just purely for the weight loss and hoping that it gets you to a healthy weight, we will focus on other ways of doing this, where it's not going to absolutely like wreck my mental state. So if you're still here, thank you for listening. Thank you for sitting with me and letting me talk. I wanted to do just kind of sit down to talk about this because it's very important for me to kind of get these types of feelings out there, not only for myself, but also for anybody who maybe feels the same as I did, not only with, you know, not working out with semaglutide when you see everybody else and able to do it with no issues, and you kind of feel like you failed something, or you're not strong enough to go through the symptoms. And then also I wanted to talk about the HG because it affects so many women out there, and I just know how lonely and horrible it feels to be in that moment. So thank you guys for tuning in this week. Next week will be probably a normal style vlog of just follow me around for the week. I will not be emotional like today, but I appreciate you guys watching and being here. And I hope you guys tune in next week, and I will talk to you guys then.